Welcome to the monthly market report for the Hamilton residential real estate market. My name is Mike McCarthy, and we'll get into what happened here in November and uh, kind of get into what it means, how to read it, and what to look forward to. Now, a few people in the industry, I think, have been taking a look at some things that happened in November and seeing them as good signs for the market. I'm not so sure that that's the case, and we'll dig into that and get my take on where I see those numbers maybe differently than some others are. But to get right into it, so the median price in Hamilton in November dropped slightly from October. It finished right at 700,000. Well, 699,950, so pretty close. Down about a percentage point from 707.5 in October, and down a little bit from last November, 1.5%, when it closed at 711,000. Overall this year, that's down from the high point of 770,000 that we saw in both June and July, and that's a loss of about 9% from the summer. So continuing this trend downwards. It's kind of slowing down, but still continuing. The pressures are showing up in the price as going down in this market here. So next is the cumulative days on market, and in November we saw it take 35 days to sell the typical property in Hamilton, which is a 20% increase over last November when it took 29 days. And other than January of this year, which is always extremely high, November was the highest, and even like three times as long as it took to sell back in May, double of July. So while it was feeling like it was taking a long time to sell houses a couple, 2, 3 months ago, it really wasn't. That feeling is now reality. Definitely 35 days is a high number compared to what we've seen in quite a long time. Next, we'll take a look at the number of the months of inventory. So we have seen a downtick in that. On average, we'll see months of inventory. Typically we'll see months of inventory unchanged from October to November. So it's a good sign that we've seen that decrease a little bit this year in November. But it's still double the amount that we have seen over the last 10 years in November. So relatively speaking, it's a high number for months of inventory in the market. And compared to last year in November, where it was 3.1 months of inventory, which at the time we considered really high, it's up 32%. So definitely overall, this number judges how much how much feels out there, and it's like four months is definitely one of the highest numbers we've seen in the last 10 years. On to the actual number of units sold. So we've seen a continued kind of cold streak in units sold. This November again was like it's one of the 6 slowest months we've seen in the last almost 11 years. But that's no different than what we saw in September and October. Just a very, very cool market in terms of number of units sold. Now, last year was pretty slow. It was 435. That was also one of the slowest months we've seen. So down 3.5%. October, we saw 422 units. This month, November, 420. So pretty much the same there. So we can view the volume of sales, even though it's low, because it stayed roughly the same as September and October. That is a positive because we do usually see a decline from the expected number of units sold from October to November. So the fact that it stayed steady, that's a good sign, at least in terms of relative demand. There was a higher relative amount of demand relative to expectation in November than there was in October. However, it's still very slow. 420 units is about 2/3 of what we normally see in a November. So the number of new listings slowed down a little bit. Again, it's down 26% from the amount that we saw in October. We were up 15% of the number of new listings from last November, so a little bit more inventory coming onto the market. Again, this is another small positive, seeing fewer new listings than October. But digging deeper, it's more of a saw off than a positive because first, it's 15% more than typical in a November. So again, higher number of listings coming onto the market than we normally see in the month. And what we normally see, we do normally see a drop off in the number of new listings from October to November. Just fewer people are kind of interested in getting their house on the market as we approach the holiday season. So the amount that we saw, 26% reduction, normally we see a 22% reduction from October to November. So not a huge difference. So that's why I say this reduction that we see here is it's less of a positive than it is really just more of a tie. And then, so now we have the sales and new listings, and that gets us to the sales to new listings ratio, which was 46% in November, down from 55% last November. So a softer market, still pretty balanced when you're in that 40 to 60% range, but definitely softer in terms of looking at it from a seller's perspective and a little stronger from a buyer's perspective. And it's up from 34% in October, which was extremely low for what we've seen over the last 10, 11 years. Now, keep in mind, though, that November is the second highest month for sales to new listings ratio, next to December, which is very highly skewed because very few people are putting their house on the market in December. So it's skewed very high. So even, we see a stronger number in November than in October, but we usually see that historically. So again, more of a, if you take relativity out of it, looks like a stronger month, but it's really more of the the same stuff as we saw in October. Now, how this affects the amount of units on the market, we see here it's come down a little bit, down just over 10% from October, and but up like a year. 29% we can see from that first bar there is last November, so up 29% of the amount of inventory on the market in Hamilton. So it's nice to see inventory go down 10.2%, but we do expect to see it lower in November. And based on historical levels for October and November, our relative inventory, so what we would normally expect to see in November, is actually higher for closing in what we saw at the end of November than what we saw in October. Pretty much the same, but slightly higher, at about almost 40% higher numbers than what we would normally expect to, on average, expect to see in the Hamilton market. And that's quite a change from even earlier on this year when, from March to July of this year, we were seeing lower numbers than what we expect to see in those months. So we've really had quite a swing in terms of amount of inventory on the market at the end of each month from earlier part of the year to now. And, that increase in supply, we do see correlated fairly strongly with the reduction in prices from that same period. Okay, so overall, that's where we're at. Are some numbers slightly better? Yeah, but when you take it, on their face, yes, but you dig deeper, not really. Kind of some a little bit up, some a little bit down. So mostly kind of the same type of market as we were seeing in October and also September. So it's good for buyers, other than higher rates out there, and then for sellers, it's definitely tougher than we're used to over the last many, many, many years. So for sellers, your expectations need to be adjusted accordingly. So you need to have real good market analysis in terms of knowing what to expect for the sale of your property. It has to be adjusted to today's market. You can't be thinking of what it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 months ago because things are different. So you have to adjust accordingly, and you definitely have to compete harder if you are getting your house on the market. You can't just put it out there and expect it to sell. We saw that happen for so long that we the recency bias, people love to throw that term around, but that's definitely became the case here, where thought it was just super simple to sell a house because it was. All you had to do was almost do nothing if you didn't want to. and just put a for sale sign, and you would sell it within a week or so. That's definitely not the case now. Now, there's always value to properly preparing your house for sale, but it's even more critical now. You got to gain the buyer's attention. It's got to look great, or else people are just passing it by. It's rare, so you got to be ready to compete hard, price your house properly. It can be done for sure, but it's got to be done in order to get a sale that is on level with what you should expect to get for your property. So there you go. That's the wrap up for November. We'll see you in a month or so and see how December went, and how the whole year ended up. All right. Enjoy the next month, the holidays and time off and time with friends and family, and please be safe. All right. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Be happy to chat with you one-on-one or in comments below, wherever you're seeing this. And yeah, would really appreciate it. And other than that, we'll see you in a month. Thanks for your time.